From its origins, humankind has had to deal with the challenges posed by nature. From nature, humans have always obtained their food, shelter, and clothing. And when nature acts harshly, bringing storms, droughts, or fires, people have to respond. In this unit, you're going to learn how people are connected to their environment. You're going to study how humans interact with and modify their physical setting. And you're also going to learn about the challenges that people sometimes face because of extreme weather, natural disasters, and limited natural resources. There are many ways in which people are affected by their physical environment. The environment affects their choices of foods, shelter, clothing, and general way of life. And certain aspects of the physical environment are especially important. Fresh water is essential to human life. Indeed, the earliest civilizations arose in river valleys, and ancient Egyptians, for example, developed their civilization along the Nile River. And even today, most cities are located near a major body of water. People are also affected by landforms. People will generally settle in flat, fertile valleys and plains where they can build homes and grow crops easily. Fewer people live in the mountains, swamps, or desert areas. However, even in these harsher environments, different groups often develop their own way of life. For example, the Berbers live in desert areas of North Africa between the Sahara and the Mediterranean Sea, and their lifestyle is closely based on a close connection to their natural surroundings. And few crops are able to be grown in frigid, barren areas above 10,000 feet. However, the ancient Incas flourished high in the Andes Mountains where they were able to develop root crops such as potatoes. And some areas have more natural resources or more valuable natural resources than other places. And resources are really anything that people can use that come from nature. And some places in the modern day generally make their living off of these valuable natural resources. Humans must also adjust to their environment or change the way that they live. Climate has a profound effect on how people live. For example, the Vikings of Norway wore heavy clothing made of wool or animal hides and fur to protect them from the cold. In contrast, people who live in warm areas like Egypt will wear light clothes to keep them cool. Climate also affects what can grow in a region and what livestock can live there. In the moist, warm areas of the Southeast and East Asia, people develop the culture of growing rice as their main food. Growing rice in flooded fields generally requires cooperation, strengthening social bonds among people. And they make use of water brought by the monsoon rains. The types of vegetation and animals in an area also greatly affect human lifestyles. People often make use of local plants and animals as sources of food, clothing, and building materials. For example, the steppes of Central Asia are made up of dry, grassy hills and plains. These steppes receive enough rainfall to support the grasses and other plant life on which grazing animals feed, but not enough rain for farming crops. As a result, on these lands, animal domestication and herding became the dominant way of life. For this reason, the peoples of Central Asia have generally been herders who were skilled at horsemanship. On the grasslands of North America, Native American Indians were hunters who lived on the meat and hides of the large number of wild buffalo. And peoples on the steppes of Asia and the Great Plains of North America both lived in tents made of animal skins, which they could move easily to follow their animal herds. Extreme weather and other natural disasters pose special problems. These are not the typical conditions that people usually expect. Tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanoes, although infrequent, are events that can kill thousands of people and destroy buildings, bridges, and roads. And although unusual, people have always had to deal with extreme conditions and natural disasters, from ancient times to the present. In 79 AD, the volcano at Mount Vesuvius erupted, and thousands of Romans were buried under volcanic ash in the city of Pompeii. The eruption also changed the course of the Sarno River and raised the sea. The island of Krakatoa was located in the Pacific Ocean. Its volcano exploded in 1873 with a force thousands of times more powerful than the atomic bombs used in World War II. It blew the island apart in one of the most violent eruptions in recorded history. And in 1906, most of San Francisco was destroyed by a great earthquake, killing over 3,000 people. And scientists predict further earthquakes in this region. In 2004, an undersea earthquake in the Indian Ocean led to a giant tidal wave or tsunami, and more than 200,000 people were killed in Indonesia and Thailand. Waves raced across the Pacific Ocean at hundreds of miles per hour, and waves as high as 100 feet struck coastal communities. And in 2010, a volcanic eruption in Iceland halted air travel throughout Europe for several days. Volcanoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis are often caused by tectonic plate movement. And the location of many of these disasters, such as the Pacific Rim of Fire, can often be foreseen. But because these events are infrequent, people continue to return and rebuild in these otherwise uninviting areas. Weather also sometimes brings dangerous conditions, including hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, and extreme heat or cold. For example, some scientists believe that rising temperatures from global climate change may be responsible for the increasing number of droughts. Lack of rainfall has brought desertification, or changing into a desert, to areas like Africa's Sahel region, south of the Sahara Desert. And rising global temperatures may also be responsible for the greater severity of tropical hurricanes. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast and became one of the costliest disasters in United States history. There's no way to prevent extreme weather or periodic natural disasters. The challenge for humans is to predict them, prepare for them, or adapt to them, and to reduce their devastating effects. For example, in 1989, an earthquake in San Francisco led to far fewer deaths and less property damage than less severe recent earthquakes in India, Iran, China, or Haiti. Fewer deaths and less devastation occurred in San Francisco because buildings were specifically designed to move with the earthquakes rather than collapse. And the global community now cooperates when natural disasters strike. In 2004, many nations contributed to help those injured or displaced by the tsunami. And in 2010, Haiti was hit by a devastating earthquake, killing 300,000 Haitians and leaving 1 million people homeless. People from nations around the world contributed food, medical supplies, and help in the wake of this natural disaster. Just as people are affected by their environment, they also affect their environment. Culture and technology often influence how people modify nature. And here are some of the chief ways that humans have modified the environment. Agriculture is the growing of food. 10,000 years ago, people in the Middle East found that if they planted seeds and watered plants, they could grow fruits, grains, and vegetables. And they selected certain seeds to replant in order to grow the most nourishing plants. Crop cultivation brought about modification and manipulation of the environment to increase food production. It altered the landscape by clearing existing vegetation and cutting the soil by tilling it. People also learned to irrigate their fields to increase their productivity. And since humans first learned to plant seeds, civilizations around the world have generally turned forest, grassland, and marshes into productive farmland. People also modify nature by building towns and cities. The first cities arose in the Middle East. By 7000 BC, the city of Jericho had 3,000 residents. Sumer, the world's earliest known civilization, began on the plains of Mesopotamia in 3500 BC. Later, ancient cities like Rome had as many as 1 million inhabitants. In the Middle Ages, urban centers were generally smaller. Agricultural improvements in the 1700s, increased overseas trade, and the rise of manufacturing during the Industrial Revolution led to the rapid growth of cities. Today, most people in industrialized countries live in cities. Urbanization changes the environment by concentrating thousands, even millions of people in small, treeless areas. Cities replace open fields and forests with paved concrete roads and tall buildings of steel, concrete, and glass. And public parks do try to preserve some open areas. Another way that people modify nature is by constructing dams to drain swamps, prevent floods, and to store water for drinking and irrigation. Dams also serve to generate electric power. Humans further modify the environment to provide energy for their needs. Thousands of years ago, humans discovered the power of fire to warm themselves, to cook food, and to heat water. This allowed humans to spread to new places where the climate was colder. Later, humans discovered that they could also burn coal, whale oil, and forms of petroleum for light, heat, and power. Modern societies continue to depend on burning fossil fuels like coal and oil. We dig mines in the ground for coal and drill holes for oil. However, the demand for oil can have destructive effects on the environment, such as the massive leak of crude oil when an oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010. Its use also causes air pollution. The rise of industry and the growth of the world population in the past 200 years have led to a decline in air and water quality. Exhaust from cars and factories, together with liquid and solid waste from manufacturing and urban centers, cloud the air and clog water supplies. Oil spills cover spots of the ocean and shoreline. Since almost all living organisms depend upon clean air and water, pollution poses a severe threat to the survival of life on Earth. The burning of fossil fuels like coal and oil or gasoline has significantly increased amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide and water act together to wrap the planet in a blanket, holding in heat. With increased amounts of carbon dioxide, less heat is able to escape, leading to the greenhouse effect. If temperatures continue to rise, part of the polar ice caps could melt and sea levels would rise. Free oxygen combines with oxygen molecules to create ozone in the Earth's upper atmosphere. This ozone absorbs much of the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Without an ozone layer, ultraviolet radiation would cause mutations in most living cells. The use of chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, as coolants in refrigerators and air conditioners threatens the ozone layer. Each CFC molecule can break down thousands of ozone molecules. As a result, an ozone hole has appeared in the Earth's atmosphere, leading to some increased incidence of skin cancer. Countries have agreed to ban CFCs, although some still use them. Poisonous chemicals are used to control insects that threaten crops, but pesticides then become part of the water and soil, endangering other organisms such as birds. Some pesticides may also be absorbed by the crops we grow for food. On the other hand, banning pesticides would make it difficult to grow enough food for everyone. When coal and oil are burned, they dump pollutants into the atmosphere. Many pollutants like sulfur dioxide turn into acids, and these acids get washed out of the air when it rains. When these pollutants return, they are highly toxic, killing fish, destroying forests, eroding soil, and further endangering the environment. The United States actually established the acid rain program in 1990 to reduce pollutants causing acid rain. Acid rain is now 2/3 less prevalent than it was in 1976. Some resources, like trees, can renew themselves after a period of time. These are renewable resources. Other resources, like oil and coal, are non-renewable and can only be used once. Many human activities, like the burning of fossil fuels, are using up Earth's non-renewable resources, while other activities are using renewable resources, like trees, at a faster rate than they can renew themselves. One of the greatest threats to the environment is the destruction of many natural habitats. As the human population expands, more and more forests, wetlands, and grasslands are destroyed to build farms, factories, and cities. The destruction of tropical rainforests is one of the most dramatic examples of the loss of natural habitats. Tropical rainforests have the greatest biodiversity and the greatest concentration of plant life on Earth. The destruction of areas like the Amazon rainforest reduces the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere and leads to the extinction of many species. More plant and animal species now become extinct each year than at any other time since the extinction of dinosaurs. This is especially important since genetic material in some of the species facing extinction may contain cures to many diseases. In order to solve these problems and challenges, many countries now seek sustainable development. This means using resources in a way that can meet future as well as present human needs. If we can continue to rely on non-renewable resources and to pollute the Earth's atmosphere, land, and water at current rates, there will not be sufficient resources available for use by future generations. To achieve sustainable development means using renewable resources at a slower rate so that nature is able to replenish itself. This requires that both industrialized and developing nations must find ways to achieve economic growth without the reckless, wasteful, and harmful use of natural resources. Ultimately, sustainable development is the realization that since humans depend on their physical environment, they must also act to protect that physical environment.